This is one of the reasons why you had marijuana made illegal in the U.S. Marijuana was legal up until about 1936, 1937. And you have a man named Harry J. Anslinger, which you talked about last time. He's the chairman of the National Narcotics Commission. You can Google this. You can go to answers.com, read about this. What happened was there were rumors that white women would crave black men when they were high on marijuana. Okay?
And squash that, huh?
And, you know, you already had it popular amongst a lot of, you know, jazz musicians, things like that. So, because of outcries, what have you, they made it illegal. And he made it illegal to criminalize African-American men who continue to use it. Okay? And this is what's happening. This is why a lot of us are going to jail today over marijuana. Okay? 1, 2 sticks of marijuana, what have you. Most of us who get convicted for drugs is not for drug distribution, it's for possession. Okay? And we have to understand when you get convicted for that, number one, it's a felony on your record. Even if you do a plea bargain and don't do any time in jail, if it's a felony, it's still on your record. So in many states you can't vote, many jobs you can't get, things like that. And also if you were convicted of a felony during the time that you were receiving federal student loans or grants, you're not eligible for those items. Okay. Now a lot of people don't know this, but even if you have a felony, if you were convicted during the time that you were not receiving federal student aid, you can still apply for financial aid and receive it. Because I've had people that do that. It says it right there on the FAFSA form. It asks, were you convicted during, if I remember correctly, it says during a school year that you were receiving federal student aid. Okay, they changed the laws. Before then, if you were convicted of a felony, you couldn't get student aid, but they changed it as recently as 2007, because I was working on the No Worker Left Behind program that the state of Michigan had. Okay, so if you have people who have felonies, read that form. One of the things we have to learn how to do is answer the question that's asked, because a lot of people would mark it yes when they've never received federal student aid. They just see felony and they say yes. No. Read the question that's asked. All right. Okay, so, you recording again? Yeah. Okay. All right. So Birth of a Nation is very important to understand. Very, very powerful piece of propaganda, influenced the way a lot of people think. And it laid the foundation, like I said, laid the foundation for a lot of the stereotypes that we see in movies today. All right, now, we pick this up.
Yeah, as well as all the white supremacy.
Oh, exactly. All that's in there.
Everybody see it. It's outrageous.
Exactly. All that's in there. That's why it's so important to understand history, okay? Because all that coming from the Civil War, Reconstruction, all that is played out in that 3-hour spectacle. Also, it's important to know, most of the movies before then were just short movies. This was the first one that long, that expensive to make, okay? The first rendition of Uncle Tom's Cabin was in 1903. It's 12 minutes, okay? Other movies came out after that, like 30 minutes, something like that, okay? This was the first one on that level. It's also important to note that after 1915, a lot of African Americans, Oscar Micheaux was one of them, famous African American director, they realized that we had to control our own images and we had to make the movies that showed us in the best light. We couldn't rely on Hollywood to do it. So you had about 150 production companies created, owned by African Americans, some of them financed only by us, others by us and Europeans, that produced movies to show us in a more positive light. Okay, so they were like the Spike Lees, the John Singletons, things like that of their day. Okay, all right. So fast forward here and go to 1968. We're gonna look at TV here. 1968, you have the plot of a program called All in the Family, and it seeks to throw a humorous spotlight on frailties, prejudices, and concerns by making them a source of laughter. And actually this quote says, okay, quote, the program you're about to see, this is the first episode, the pilot episode of All in the Family has this disclaimer, okay, because it first comes on in 1968, okay, so they have this disclaimer. The program you're about to see is All in the Family. It seeks to throw a humorous spotlight on our frailties, prejudices, and concerns by making them a source of laughter. We hope to show in a mature fashion just how absurd they are, end quote. With this carefully worded disclaimer, the CBS television network ushered in a new era of television comedy on January 12, 1971 with the premiere of All in the Family. Okay, they do their pilot episode in 1968 called Those Were the Days. And if you look at the theme song of All in the Family, they're at the piano singing Those Were the Days. Okay, this is what it was. So this stars Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton. You think of it, whatever else Carol O'Connor plays in, you see Archie Bunker. Okay, you look at him In the Heat of the Night, you think of Archie Bunker. All right, so this show was like the first one of its first one ever like it. They deal with a lot of stereotypes, prejudices, things like that. Archie Bunker refers to Jews as Hebes. He refers to Hispanics as Spics. He refers to African Americans as colors, things like that. All right. It goes on to be a big hit TV show. By the time the series began in its second season in the fall of 1971, All in the Family was CBS's top-rated program, a status it enjoyed for the next 5 years. All right. Now, it is the executive producer of it is Norman Lear, who goes on to be executive producer on a number of different shows. You have Norman Lear and Bud York. All right. In the second, first of all, on this show, you have a character. Their next door neighbor is Lionel Jefferson. He's played by an actor named Mike Evans. Okay, Mike Evans also becomes co-creator of Good Times, and this is why in the credits for Good Times you see the name Mike Evans, and then later it says Michael Evans. All right. In the second season of All in the Family, they have an episode where Edith's cousin comes. Her name is Maude Finley, played by B. Arthur. Maude, the next season, gets her own spin-off show called Maude. Okay, and Maude is on her 4th marriage. I don't know if some people picked up on that or not, but she's on her 4th marriage. She's a women's libist. She's a liberal, things of this nature. But she has a maid named Florida Evans. Okay, now on the show, Florida has a husband who's a firefighter. All right, and I'm going to share some information with you from Eric Monti. This is from his website, ericmonti.com. Does anybody know who Eric Monti is? Nobody knows who Eric Monti is? Eric Monti was the co-creator of Good Times. In every episode of Good Times, you see his name in the credits. Okay, Eric Monti. All right. But Eric Monti was also good friends with Mike Evans as well. All right. So I'm going to share some information with you. And it's very important to understand Good Times, because if you can understand Good Times and what was going on with the images in Good Times, then when you look at all these other shows, you can look at them in a new light. You can look at them in a new paradigm. There are a couple of chairs right there. 3 chairs in a row right there. Okay, now, so you can check out his website, ericmonti.com. All right. It's a little lengthy, but this is very important here. Okay, so he says, let's see. When I came to Hollywood, I was a young black high school dropout from the streets of Chicago, whose desire was to improve the images of black people on the screen and in books. Very important, because he grew up in Chicago's Cabrini Green housing projects. Okay, in 1970, Norman Lear produced a show called All in the Family. He hired a guy named Mike Evans to play a character called Lionel. Lionel's first line on All in the Family was, quote, "I's gonna get an edumacation," end quote. The kind of degrading, stereotypic thing I had come to Hollywood to change. I knew Mike. One day, Mike came to me and said that he was on this show called All in the Family, and that all he had was a walk-on, walk-off part. He said that there were a lot of people writing for the show and getting paid. He heard that I was good. He heard I was a good writer, and he wanted me to write a show centering on his character. He would put both our names on it and take it to Norman Lear. Norman Lear, once again, executive producer of All in the Family. I wrote the episode in which I created Lionel's mother and father, George and Louise Jefferson. George was a successful black man who didn't like white people and called them hunkies. Mike took the script to Norman, and 2 weeks later, Norman sent for me. The first thing Norman Lear said when I walked into his office was, quote, "America would never buy a black man calling white people honky on a sitcom, end quote. I said, quote, they will if you keep it funny, end quote. You can't be that funny, he told me. I can, I said. He said he wanted to talk about something else. He sent for Mike Evans, who was on the set rehearsing All in the Family. While we were waiting, he told me that All in the Family was originally an English show and that he had another English show that he was getting ready to produce about a junk man called Steptoe and Son. Because Sanford and Son was based upon an English sitcom called Steptoe and Son. If you look at the credits of Sanford and Son, you'll see that in there. And I have, proud to say, I have all 6 seasons of Sanford and Son on DVD. But one of the things I do is look at credits of these different shows and try to connect the dots, see what's going on. Okay. Also, if you look at Sanford and Son, in some of the early episodes, you have Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney as some of the writers on Sanford and Son also. And Quincy Jones did the theme song for Sanford and Son as well. Okay? All right. I recommended Redd Foxx for the part because Red was playing a junk man in a movie called Compton Comes to Harlem. Okay, very movie from the 70s, okay? And I'd been a fan of Red's for years. Norman Lear, who had never heard of Redd Foxx, told me that it was a white show and that it wouldn't work with a black actor. Mike came up and Norman said, now he's saying Norman Lear is telling Eric Monty that this show is a white show and it never worked with a black actor. This is a show that becomes Sanford and Son. He's saying it never worked with a black actor. Mike came up and Norman said he wanted to do a black show and asked if we had any good ideas. I immediately pitched The Black Family, which came on the air 3 years later as Good Times. A few months after the first meeting, he started shooting Sanford and Son, with Redd Foxx as the lead character. I tried out for the role as Lamont, but Norman told me that I was a writer, not an actor. In 1972, Norman created this show called Maud. One of the characters on the show was a spunky maid, Florida Evans, played by Esther Rolle. The networks liked it. Now, important to note, even though Esther Rolle played a maid, she was a very classy, dignified woman. People who I've interviewed who knew her said this. I had the pleasure of meeting her once because she was a member of my sister's sorority. She's a member of Zeta Phi Beta, a member of Phi Beta Sigma, and she was at one of our state conferences, signing autographs, things like that. So I got a chance to meet her shortly before she died. So she's a very dignified, very classy woman, well respected. In 1973, Norman informed me that the networks had decided to put Esther Rolle in her own show, and he had pitched my idea, The Black Family. He had pitched my idea to her, and she liked it, and therefore Good Times was going on the air, and he wanted me to be the head writer. I agreed. He asked me if I had an agent, and I told him no. Check this out. So he suggested an agent by the name of Bernie Weintraub. Since I didn't know any agents in Hollywood, I agreed. He introduced me to Bernie, and I accepted him as my agent. Also, incidentally, when I was doing research for my interview with Bernadette Stannis from Good Times, I came across Eric Monty's business manager's number, so I called her. And when I talked to her, she said, you know, unfortunately, I'm not his business manager anymore. I tried to set him up with various deals. He didn't go through with them, things like that. So after years and years and years, I just stopped. She also told me that it was a period of time that he was homeless. He was broke, he was homeless, and he wasn't getting his money from Norman Lear like he was supposed to. He ended up suing Norman Lear to get his rights for his royalties for All in the Family. She was also the business manager for Mike Evans as well, and she told me Mike Evans died broke. Mike Evans died in 2006, and he was the first Lamb on the Jeffersons. She told me that Mike Evans died broke. All right, and that's a tragedy with a lot of our celebrities, especially those who come into first generation money. A lot of them don't know how to handle it, don't know what to do with it, things like that. They're creative geniuses, but don't know how to hold on to the money. Okay, so between 1971 and 1974, I had at least 20 meetings with Norman, and the one note I got in every meeting without fail was, quote, "You have got to get rid of the father. A strong black man in a sitcom won't work," end quote. I consistently refused. When Esther Rolle was told she was going to get her own show, she insisted that she keep the name Florida Evans that she had on Maud, and she didn't want to be a single mom, so they had to keep the husband in the show. They did not want her to have a husband on Good Times. This is at the start. Okay, so you have to understand history. You have to understand the assassination and masculinization of the African American male image.